welcome. It's really amazing, in my opinion, to be back here. As we go, a couple awkward days for the 2026 UFL Draft. And if you're just joining me, my name is Pat Ruffino. I'm do this little YouTube football, whatever you want to call it, show of analyze and educate, and appreciate you checking in on a Friday night. Really as we start breaking down this UFL season, this UFL draft and whatnot, just plenty of, in my opinion, plenty of things to be grateful for. Um, as the season continues to progress and whatnot, we're going into since 2019. This is going to be the seventh year of spring football, excuse me, eighth year of spring football. And well, now for only one of these franchises, the Birmingham Stallions, this is their fifth year of their existence, which, you know, I think it's pretty crazy, especially with some of these XFL teams or former XFL teams, 4 years. Some of these guys going into their fourth and fifth year with the same franchise and whatnot. I think it's something to be extremely grateful for. But if you're checking in here, obviously you probably saw my quarterback videos the other day regarding the quarterback allocations as we transition into the overall UFL draft. Now, I think the guys at the PFN, James Larson, Nick Thorne, Anthony Miller, Rick Saratello, former offensive coordinator, Michigan Panthers, Eric Marty. I think they did a really good job of, long story short, I think they did a really good job of posting and doing what they could. But at the same time, I think the UFL kind of dropped the ball for them. And it's not their fault. Maybe when I say for PFN guys and whatnot, they had a really great show planned out with plenty of guests. And, as history showed us, doing the live stream is never, it could be a hit or a miss, in my opinion. Sometimes they do really amazing and, the picks are coming out and they're actually able to transition and put out the content that's needed. And other times, and I feel like that's kind of a disservice to fans personally. And, it sucks because they had great guests on. I jumped on there for a little bit. I was at work, jumped on, threw some tidbits in there and everything like that. But I personally feel it's really unfortunate that the league couldn't, essentially enhance the collaboration. And I know they might not ever go to independent media creators or anything like that, but at the same time is like, I think at one point those boys had 400 plus fans on there, and people were curious about draft picks and whatnot. And I think I think they weren't able to. Hell, I think 20 of them maybe. So it kind of is what it is. It's unfortunate. I think a lot of good stuff was going on there. But it's just unfortunate. And it's something we're accustomed to, obviously, at this point. Um, it's you put all the effort in and this, that, and it's just really unfortunate that there was a lack of ROI for them. And I don't know, man. I don't know, ladies and germs. It's just very unfortunate. But without further ado, we're going to try to go through all 8 teams of the draft. Some guys, just like anything, some guys you're going to raise your eyebrows at. Some guys are going to be like, who's that guy? I'm going to do my best. I kind of went through last night as I was doing all this stuff. I kind of went through and started breaking down some of these players and trying to learn more and doing my own thing on it. But at the same time, it just kind of seems that, there's a lot of retread, there's a lot of turnover, and, we'll see what happens. I'm really excited for some of these guys. Some of these other guys, I don't think they're coming around, to be honest with you, but it's not the reality of the situation. But we're going to start off with the Battlehawks going out there first. I'm just going to go off these Twitter posts and whatnot. It's the easiest way. I started making slides for everyone, but it's just not really going to work out, in my opinion. But in the original round, the Battlehawks went to Mike P, brought him back, and Spencer Rowland. Obviously, Mike P, three-year selection or 3-year all-league selection and whatnot. Spencer Rowland, He did a really good job coming filling in, but didn't really get any reps or anything like that, but did enough to earn some workouts. Two pieces there that could really supplement and enhance that room in my opinion, with the pieces they also brought in. Other players that they brought in on the defensive side in the front seven, Carlos Davis, Birmingham Stallions guy, all league in 2024, had a cup of tea with the Bengals. Jordan Williams, it's been I believe he was all XFL in 2023 with the Brahmas. Pretty solid linebacker. I believe he has 240 tackles. Mike Rose, 3-year Battlehawk out of Iowa State, has had 2 NFL contracts in that 3-year span. Steve Linton was a guy signed late last year. Didn't really class of 2025 guy. Excited to see if he's going to have an opportunity to expand. Mind you, the Battlehawks did bring back Pita Tome Penu and Travis Feeney, so he'll have to work to get in the rotation there. And Taylor Stallworth, he was an interior defensive lineman, a little bit of an older guy. Big thing about him as well was with the Michigan Panthers last year. So went with a good mix of youth and experience in that front seven. As they shift over to the receiving core, remember the Battlehawks did protect Frank Darby and and Hakeem Butler. They'll both be coming back in 2026. Blake Jackson returns. Older guy, was in the XFL 2020. I believe he was a class of 2018, 2019 wide receiver, originally a quarterback. Gary Jennings returns after reunites with Ricky Prohl. Wide receiver, earned a contract in 2023 with the Carolina Panthers, most notably known for the what's it called? That fake pass from Sterling Hoffrichter. And Justin Smith, someone who's been a part of the Roughnecks and the Brahmas over the last couple of years. Solid veteran pieces. Not going to make anything too crazy, but at the same time, with Blake Jackson, you have a lot of versatility there. You got guys like Brandon Silvers or Michael Pratt back there. They'll be able to make life pretty simple. As you continue on into the secondary, AJ Thomas is a guy that's been around for a little bit. A lot of upside there. Dan Isom, in my opinion, is one of the more underrated pieces in this. Isom's a guy who is a St. Louis local. His father was a former police chief, has done some good stuff in Birmingham as a safety, and even played a little bit of nickel, I believe, in 2024. He's a guy that could, really take ownership and bring a local aspect here and, just continue to succeed in that room as he has the last 2 years. Originally, fun fact, was signed by the Philadelphia Stars a couple of years ago. Jordan Mosley returns. His third season in the UFL, and Sean Freich was a guy that was signed by the Brahmas late in 2025, earned some workouts in the NFL teams. I remember the Eagles, so he's a long, lanky cornerback that should be able to press for a starting job, even with the guys that were brought back. Now, as you transition to the free agency period, the Battlehawks have lost 2 players already to NFL futures deals, Aiden Williams and Wyatt Bowles. Both those guys will not be joining the team as of right now, but they went pretty young. A lot of these guys, not much, a lot of 24, 23 guys and whatnot. Jared Hufford, that's a guy that coming out of, I want to say, coming out of Purdue or Iowa State, guy to be really pumped about. All these guys really, really, really young, a little bit of experience. And just like a lot of these free agents, the UFL went extremely, extremely heavy on guys who were in that 23, 24 class in order to not only maximize the youth movement that Mike Rapoli has been pushing, but in my opinion, by doing that, he'll be able to get some more frequency of guys who are fresh off the NFL radar to get right back in. Now, if you go to the defensive line, a guy that you're going to be really excited about, in my opinion, is Michael Dumafor. Mike Dumafor, from a maybe not a youth movement, but he's a guy who's been on the Battlehawks radar since 2024. signed an LOI with them, went back into the NFL. He should be coming back, and he should be a guy that could play either 3-tech, 4-eye, and make a lot of noise from there. I'm very excited about him. They went and they added 2 veterans. Luke Barku, if you remember him, was with the San Antonio Brahmas. He's a guy that earned all XFL honors. From there, transitioned to the NFL, spent time with the Cowboys, the Steelers, and the Lions, and recently was cut. Nate Brooks, all UFL selection in 2024, earned the contract with the Bengals. A little bit long in the tooth, but obviously convinced enough people that he deserves to stick around based off his body of work. Nate played with the Michigan Panthers and won a championship with the Birmingham Stallions in 2023. Each year he played in spring football, he ended up earning a contract, spent the whole year in 2024 on the practice squad of the Bengals as well. As you transition to the skills, you got Jordan Waters. They added 2 running backs here in the first evolution of the skill position. Someone you're going to be really high up on is Tyler Neville. Neville actually suffered from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in 2015 when he was a kid. I think he was 16 years old. Also spent time with the Dallas Cowboys during their training camp. Thayer Thomas, as well, as a gentleman who recently was cut by the Denver Broncos due to injury, was waived off their practice squad, has spent time with the Vikings. A lot of youth, really going to compete with a couple of the veterans, those running backs as well. Kylan James, a gentleman coming out of UNLV. He's a guy to keep eyes on as well. Averaged 7 yards a carry when he was at UNLV. And then Ladidra Griffin was another guy that the Brahmas, I believe, selected a couple of years back. Really dynamic kick returner. Played with the Titans and Vegas at one point. So a lot of guys just continue the youth movement. Now, a lot of people are going to be disappointed that the team couldn't retain Rodrigo Blankenship, but what they do bring back is a Missouri local in Tucker McCann. Cool thing about McCann is he's actually been out of the NFL for a while. Last time on the roster in 2021, was able to transition back through NFL workouts and whatnot. And to me, it's extremely impressive because by doing so, he was able to kind of make some waves. Was able to find his way back with the United Football League. Obviously, went to one of the workouts, and then he's got an opportunity right now. So it does, and he's a St. Louis local. He's from O'Fallon, Illinois, which is not that far. Ryan Sanborn, he's been on the fringe as well. A couple NFL practice squad opportunities as a punter. And Matthew Hembrough was on the Cardinals about 2 years ago until a back injury kind of derailed him. Now, as they transition into next wave of this, overall, nothing too crazy in my opinion. Some of these guys, they really, nothing that's going to wow anyone, but at the same time, good, solid football players that are around to make an impact. And hopefully what Mike Rapoli has stated is he's wanting to get 200, 300 guys to the NFL, maybe not in a year, but 4 or 5 years from now. Something that has been harped on a little bit, that, obviously there's been a lot of specialists doing a lot of good stuff and making their names and whatnot. As the season sits right now, last year the UFL had 62 players. There's currently 18 remaining on rosters. 75 players went last year. So currently the UFL through 2 seasons has 27 players on NFL rosters. If you add in another 4 from the USFL, so you're at 31. I believe another 5 from XFL 2023, so 36. And then another 4 from the 22 USFL, you're at 40. So Rapoli is about 10% of what he wants to get his goal. Or excuse me, he's at 40% from 100. But, obviously he wants to get to that 400 that he's also mentioned that figure as well. You're looking at, you're about 10% there. So with a lot of these guys who are having these ties and whatnot, you're hoping that you're going to be able to push it a little bit more. And I'm very curious to see if they're able to reach those goals. And, you know, we'll see what happens. So it's been a lot, but nothing too crazy on that front as well. Transitioning into the DC Defenders, you know, they came out. Adrian Ely, a guy with plenty of NFL or plenty of experience in the UFL, spent the last couple of years with the Arlington Renegades. It's going to supplement what they got going on there. Shannon Harris, I think, did a pretty good job of maintaining the core. Mike Maietti, going to be a 4-year guy there. Tykeem Doss, another reserve offensive lineman, should take a better step. And you also got, Ty Scott, Cornell Powell, Deion Jackson, Mason Fairchild, a lot of guys on that offensive side of the ball who are going to continue to make life easy for the trio of quarterbacks that were retained. For their front seven, Maxwell, Brian Abraham, Farrod Gardner, all guys who could play at a high level in this league. Well, you also got Big Phil Hoskins as well. That's really going to clog in the Greg Williams 3-4 scheme that he likes to run. Went over to the skills, running it back with Abram Smith. Man, I love Abram Smith. He's going to go into year 4. However, he's creeping up on age 30, which is always a scary thing for running backs. Not really sure if that's really the move, but I don't get, that's not my job to make those decisions. So a whole lot of is what it is on that front. You can transition as well into Seth Williams off NFL contract, Ben Bredeson off NFL contracts as well. Off his 2025 season as well. It's a guy who has plenty of experience with, bouncing back and forth between DC and everything like that, understands the system, undrafted out of Vanderbilt. And, I think Abram Smith is really going to be kind of that wild card in this. Trey Berry listed as a tight end, does play tight end, but also their long snapper the last couple of years. Going into the secondary, they brought back Sam Kidd. Kai Nakua was selected but has retired. Deontay Anderson, a guy that's been there for a while. Leon O'Neal, has made a lot of waves via social media. Some great, some not. But at the end of the day, he was an all UFL safety for Houston. Has played arena ball, played in the CFL, played with the 49ers at one point. He's a guy that, high impact player, high flying player, and a guy that's going to make an impact no matter where he's at on the field. Also, Keandre Thomas, another guy who probably at this point fits in more as a reserve, which traded to DC last year, but was originally with the Houston Roughnecks in 2024, had time with the Carolina Panthers and the Pittsburgh Steelers as well. So all around solid NFL football players, guys who have been around the block and are going to make an impact here. As they go into the offensive line, a couple guys with NFL experience, big mauling dudes. Jalen Duncan, 6'6", 6th-round draft pick at one point. Guy's been around the block, man. I mean, that's what they're looking for. 6'6", 300 pounds. Probably going to step in, be a day one offensive tackle for them. 2023, I think, NFL draft pick. Has been there, done that. You also got Parker Clements there, another 6'6", 6'7" guy. UDFA out of Virginia Tech. They got some giant human beings, man. And Silas Delancey, actually originally drafted by the the Memphis Showboats during the 2023 college draft. This guy that's gonna, 6'5", 6'6", 320 pounds. They got some beef. I mean, I'm very curious to see how it starts shaking up. But overall, you're bringing size to the room, and that's obviously what you want. And when the NFL is looking for big framed guys, DC is going to have that number. Big one in this room, and I mean big in a lot of ways, is Desmond Watson. Watson's a guy who obviously made waves because of how large he was at Florida, but 6'6", 420 pounds or something ridiculous like that. He's going to be a guy that people are going to really keep an eye on. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers gave him a $70,000 bonus to be a part of the team. He wasn't actually a part of the team, which is what it is. But at the same time, this guy is going to have his opportunity. And, if you can't play in the UFL, you're probably not going to be able to play in the NFL. And a lot of guys have had early retirements because of that fact and that logic. So something to keep tabs on with that. Looking really forward to seeing if he is able to live up to the standard or if he's not. But at the end of the day, I kind of picked Desmond Watson as a guy that I think would have done great things in Arlington or DC. Glad to see him get the opportunity from there. Got some extra experience here at the wide receiver / skills position. They pick up Zach Kuntz, who's been with the Jets at the Old Dominion 2023, spent time on and off there. They go Jalen Virgil as well from App State. He's been on and off teams like Buffalo, Denver, and Arizona. And Montreal, Washington could be a nice shifty slot for them, kind of replace the Chris Rowland role. Came out of Samford, I think, in 2022, fifth-round draft pick, has bounced around with Denver, KC, and obviously the Giants. This guy that is going to surprise a lot of people, in my opinion, could do a lot of good stuff, very shifty, can help in the return game, and from there, he's going to be able to help and kind of progress on. And DC Defender fans, you're not going to be able to tell that Chris Rowland is gone. So, and it's nice that they did a little shout out for them. Lewis Klein, a guy who's been bounced around as well in these spring football leagues, he returns. You also got Azizi Hearn. He's a cornerback, not as long as guys like Keandre Thomas, but at the same time provides value, especially like everyone they're picking up, guys, has recent NFL experience. I'm going to sound like a broken record playing this, and it's all guys who were in camp in 2025, which is exactly going to see those numbers inflate when it comes down to UFL signings and whatnot. So while maybe I'm going to be over zealous on some of these signings, but I mean, to me, you got guys in the cycle. And when you have guys in the cycle and the recencies and everything like that, it's going to work well for your league. Also, really awesome to see that Gabe Taylor, brother of, Washington Commanders, or Washington football teams, Sean Taylor's brother is going to be on this team coming out of Rice and whatnot. I mean, I'm big on the legacies in this league. I'm big on putting eyeballs to this league. He was with Washington during training camp and everything like that. I mean, it's going to keep people around, man. It's going to keep people like engaged because, if you get a couple extra people to go to a football game because they want to see Sean Taylor's brother there, it counts, man. And I think people don't always understand that when it comes down to that. But I think DC does a pretty good job in their cleaning up and whatnot. I believe they opted to not go kicker or punter. Roster currently sits at 59 for them, and it's probably they're gonna lose one more because of Kai Nakua's official retirement, which has been confirmed to me by two people. So as you transition over into the Louisville Kings, obviously very curious to see what their team looks like moving forward. Kings, being coached by Chris Redman, they just hired Jamie Sharper, former DC Defenders coach, and DC Defenders coach, in addition to blanking on the gentleman's name, but he was a longtime coach at freaking Boston College. DC picking up the Memphis Showboats old roster. So technically, they're picking up a team that didn't do so well, but there's a lot of extenuating circumstances there. So we'll see what happens. They bring back Jonathan Adams, Kwame Lassiter, Chris Pierce, Alec Lindstrom, Eric Garr, Keenan Ellis, all as some of the better players for them. Josiah Bronson, Jalen Allen, Steele Chambers, guys who Cam Dantzler, all guys who made impacts for the Showboats. Some of their best players. They brought back 12 for them. So Redmond's there. He brings up Chandler Rogers, Jason Bean. Really like the fact that they got Jason Bean. Thought it was pretty cool. And from there, it's able to transition and see if they're going to be a competitive football franchise in a place that they're looking to grow on as well. Also, it was reported today by Larson that Brino Giacomini is going to be joining the staff. Brino played in the NFL for a long time as well. Kind of famous a couple of years ago. He became a little bit of a meme because he used to tell women on Tinder or something like that when he played with the Jets that he was a construction worker. So I always thought that was funny. But apparently the Kings had the first pick of the UFL allotment draft. They go with the Arlington Renegades tackle JD DiRenzo. I believe he was traded at one point. I believe he had ties to Michigan, or he was a draft pick. I don't 100% remember now, but he also played more guard than anything like that. Played with Memphis. He played with Memphis, got traded to Arlington, had some time with the Carolina Panthers. So curious to see how his ascent goes. So as you know, first round draft picks don't always work out. I love this Gunnar Britton pickup. I think Gunnar was one of the more underrated players in the UFL. I know they had some injuries last year for the DC defenders, and hell, if it don't work at tackle, you can play tight end. Nash Jensen, solid interior guard. I heard some rumors that he was kind of on the fence about playing, but obviously his rights have been taken. So we'll see what happens with him. And then James Tunstall also played tackles for the Showboats, did a pretty good job as well. The Showboats were coached by Jim Turner last year, offensive line guru, and they did a pretty good job of keeping them together. A couple guys coming here. Jameer Jones, a guy that popped, in my opinion, for Houston, did some good stuff. Myjai Sanders, good, really nice job for that front seven in Birmingham as well. You're going to also see Benning Poetoa, late signing by the Michigan Panthers, a little bit longer in the tooth, 29 years old, but has some NFL experience. So I think they did a decent job. You'd like to see them be a little bit younger, but at the same time, maybe having the vet leadership is what's needed over there. But Myjai Sanders is going to be a guy that continues to succeed in this league and someone to be excited about. You go into the skill positions, Jalen Waldemeyer, all you got to do is run some RPO and have him dump him off. Jaden Sheridan, real quick, twitchy guy, really impressed by what he can do. Isaiah Winstead, I thought I saw something about him retiring, but Jaden Sheridan, that dude, man, that guy, one of the best jump cuts I've ever seen on the football field. Thomas Burke, another Showboats guy, Division III from the College of New Jersey. You always got to show love to guys who come from the small school. And then Kalen Balaj, still kicking. Kalen Balaj. Man, I don't know, 30 years old, kind of thought he was done, but just when you think they're out, they pull themselves right back in, right? So, and then in the back end, you can never get upset about Kenny Robinson, darling of spring football from the XFL 2020, has been a pretty good player as a safety for the Birmingham Stallions over the last couple of years. So excited to see him around. And then Rashad Williams has done a lot of good things as well. Excited to see him back in the fold. So it's overall a solid day one for them. Obviously, it could always be better, but right now I think they're in a good spot as they transition into round 2 or day 2 rather, continue to hit the NFL pipeline. Earl Bostic Jr. I think that guy's going to be a pretty good player for them, and I know they're really high up on Leroy Watson. Bostic was actually selected by the Philadelphia Stars during the 2023 draft. Yep, elite pull right there. NFL stint with Dallas, played a couple games. I believe he started a couple games as well. Leroy Watson, UTSA. I think he's played with like 5 teams and whatnot. 6'5". Trying to think, he's probably. I know they said the other day he was like 6'5", 300 pounds. Good length, everything you want in a prototypical tackle. Should be a one and done guy, in my opinion. Doug Kramer. I don't think he beats out Lindstrom, but 6th-round pick out of Illinois, 6'2", 300 pounds. He's gonna get Lindstrom run for his money, and Alec Lindstrom's a guy that's been around the block, has had some success and earned NFL contracts and whatnot. So that'll be a battle to watch in the interior. Going over to the defensive front 7, a lot of guys, in my opinion, I think they kind of are just supplementing here, but Monty Rice is a guy that I think you need to be excited about. 26 years old, out of the University of Georgia, was a part of some of those great Georgia defenses and whatnot. I think he's a day one guy for them. He's going to be starting and making an impact for them. So someone to keep an eye out, in my opinion. Jaheim Thomas is another guy. I think he's going to be higher up on the depth chart. Just a little bit younger, 2025 UDFA, I believe he's out of Wisconsin. He's a guy who could possibly push. And another younger guy is Dallas Gant, who was a part of the UFL draft in 2024, was drafted by DC Defenders. He most recently was with the Philadelphia Eagles. So curious to see how he kind of shakes up here as well. I think their skill positions are really exciting with Irv Smith. This guy who's had almost 1,000 all-purpose yards. Benny Snell, Kentucky ties. Really excited for that. Lynn Bowden, I mean, what do we make of that one? Was with DC last year. Had some success in the NFL. Couldn't make the DC Defenders roster. Went up to Canada. Couldn't make that roster either. Kind of thought he was done. This is kind of like the end for him. Obviously not. So we'll see where he goes. Former 3rd-round pick in 2020. Really good gadget player. Add some depth as well with Trey McKinney. He's probably the 2nd best tight end on their roster. Really, really curious. Worth noting as well that the Louisville picked up an ELF guy in Florian Bierbaumer. He was in the one of their selections or whatever showcases. That's what they call it. So excited to see what happens on that. And they get Caden Prather, who I'm surprised is a free agent, 7th-round pick in the 2025 NFL draft. Was with the Bills this year. So I thought he'd be a guy that personally we kind of see on the around, but obviously I'm wrong on that. Another guy, Isaiah Bolden, he's been bouncing back and forth. 7th-round pick in the NFL draft with New England and San Francisco. I believe he was drafted by a UFL team as well. He's a guy that could push for playing time. Guy that still pretty young. So even if it doesn't happen this year, might happen next year. So they got time to kind of hang out with him. We'll see what happens on that front, but at the end of the day, just continuing and I've said it 3 times because we're at the back end of the Stallion or of the Kings roster, just continuing to bring guys who are fresh off the waiver wire. And by doing that, you're also going to keep the league relevant, in my opinion, as well. Had to plug in the old laptop real quick. So I think the Kings did a good job. I mean, every roster looks good on paper on January 16th. we also don't know who's going to show up and who's not. So making a return in the specialist, by the way, Mac Brown, 2023 long snapper, or excuse me, punter. Thought that was pretty awesome. Threw some bombs to Jordan Thomas in 2023 with the Orlando Guardians. So you should enjoy that if you get the opportunity to see that. And then Tanner Brown out of Oklahoma State, UD class of 23 or 22. I know he was with Atlanta at one point. I don't remember if it was during camp, but specialists are awesome in these leagues. They always do a really good job. And then, as you could see, homegrown ties doing a good job. Someone writes here, include Gunnar Griffin's WKU picture. I don't disagree, man. Got to give out to the Hilltoppers. So overall, like I said, every roster looks good on January 16th, but we'll move over to the Columbus Aviators led by Ted Ginn. Now, Ginn is fun because he just hired, I believe he hired Todd Haley and Captain Motherland as his OC in DC. So I'm really curious to see what that staff looks like moving forward. Obviously taking over the Michigan Panthers roster. That's a team that's had a lot of success over the last couple of years. That's a team that's done pretty well in sending guys to the NFL. So very curious to see how Ginn is able to lead that room or lead that team into where the continued success that was built by Steve Kaiser and Mike Nolan. So it's pretty awesome. Going with the O-line, I like Matt Faranock a lot with the Michigan with the Arlington Renegades. I thought he's a high level player. I think Aaron Montero, high level player. I think Chuck Filiala, high level player. I think you found some good gems with them. They kept Ryan Nelson, who's a guy that's really succeeded over the last couple of years. So really curious to see. They did some good stuff as far as picking up some pretty solid players like Chris Glazer and Matthew Jones. But at the end of the day, how many of these guys show up? How many of the guys show up and whatnot once it starts getting real as far as being there? Defensive front seven, I like Story Jackson, Prince Emili a lot. I think Ron Stone really came up as like they were dealing with injuries with Breland Speaks for the Michigan Panthers and Olive Sagapolu. That's a guy who's been around for a while. I thought that they'd be pretty much done with him, but obviously I was wrong. Prince Emili, that's a guy who could push Walter Palmore. I think Prince has 1 more year or 2 more years in this bad boy, and then it's over. Maybe I'm curious to see how they age guys out of this. And then Nelson Caesar, long and lanky guy, coming off the edge, never a bad choice. You got Kiki Chisholm, really excited about him. This is a guy who's been a constant and a consistent competitor here for the Houston Roughnecks and Houston Gamblers as he goes into year 3. I think he's going to be a solid wide receiver 3 for them. Also a Missouri guy. I know if the league is looking long term, he's a good guy you can keep around the transition, maybe 1 more year, 2 more years as you continue to filter in younger players. They kept Jalen Moore, they kept Devin Ross from the Michigan regime. Kind of curious on that, but at the end of the day, that's this choice they decided to make. John Levitt and Zaquandre Wright, 2 guys that have plenty of experience at the spring football level. White with the DC Defenders and Birmingham Stallions and Houston Roughnecks. Lovett's been with the Vegas Vipers and the San Antonio Bombers. I thought Lovett was a guy that's going to pop last year. The emergence of Anthony McFarland and the rest of that crew kind of, limited his exposure. But that room is going to be led by Toa Taua. who became a dude in 2025 for the Michigan Panthers. Also worth noting, Briley Moore, another consistent figure, been around since 2023. From the DC Defenders, usually a big play guy, very athletic, long tight end. Maybe not the greatest blocking tight end, but overall great. Mari Rogers as well. He's a dude that just recently retired after a couple of years in spring football, winning some championships, filtering out the young blood as times move past us and whatnot. So once again, as time moves on, it appears that many of these guys may or may not come to camp. They bring in two guys here who I'm really excited about, Kyrie Woods and Nehemiah Shelton. Both guys have been really, really solid pieces in this league for the last couple of years. Woods has graded really well per the PFF grades, hasn't gotten an opportunity in the NFL, which in my opinion is really sad. Hopefully he does this time, hopefully he does. But Nehemiah Shelton's a guy who's had plenty of shakes at this bad boy. And it's always the October Nehemiah Shelton signing that you got to look out for. Really excited about Matthew Jones coming out of Ohio State in 2024. That's a guy that I think is going to, they're going to really market around, big brand around, stuff like that. Caleb Jones is another guy who could possibly compete for the other tackle job. If Chuck Filiaga isn't able to solidify it down. They also have Jawan Bushwell-Beatty, who's 30 years old at this point, bigger guy. Kind of been exposed by some of these more athletic pass rushers, so I'm curious to see if he's going to be able to compete, and he could be a a real key piece contributor if they're able to get something out of Caleb Jones. But Ryan Nelson coming back, he's only 26 years old. DC fans, or DC Louisville fans, you got to be excited around for him. And just to go with Bros Pros 6327, yeah, no, I am. It seems like Louisville is excited for this, and I hope that they can show out and show up. So pretty awesome on that. Defensive front seven. Man, I'm gonna be honest. Looking through some of these guys, I really like Isaiah Thomas, 6'5" guy. Coming from the University of Oklahoma. I remember watching him. Amari Bruni, 6th-round pick. I think he was out of Florida. A couple of years with Vegas and Tennessee Titans. Everyone they got here, in my opinion, is in a pretty good spot to compete for playing time. Now, the only ones that I'm really curious about that were retained is Kenny Willekes. I think he's a guy that's he was protected. Ron Stone's another one. Noah Dawkins, but I think this linebacker core that they got of Amari Bruni, Noah Dawkins, Jalen Walker, these are all guys that are going to make the coaching staff has some tough decisions. And, I'm curious to see. I'm truly curious to see, how this all shakes out. Adding some skills over here. Raheem Blackshear could be a high leverage guy, could be faded out. Going in the slot, Tyreek McAllister, CFL success story, played with Vegas for a little bit. I believe, I want to say Tay Martin as well. I think that's probably going to be a guy they lean on. But yeah, none of these guys truly wowing me. That's why I think Kiki Chisholm's going to stick around and do pretty decent things for them as well. So, no one too crazy. G. Scott is a guy, I believe he has Ohio State. I think he went to Ohio State. I think he's going to back up Gunnar Oaks and Briley Moore. And then the team also protected Alize Mack. They claimed him in the free agency period, which I was pretty surprised about. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. Israel Mukakamu, that's a gentleman that I think is a day one starter for them at safety out of South Carolina. Josh Thompson out of Texas, who they're featuring on the graphic. That's a guy I think is going to be holding the back down. And then Cam Smith, second round pick out of South Carolina. He's going to be a dude that's going to have to compete. That I think could push Miller, Woods, and Kendrick Whitehead as well. So I think that will be the first guy in that secondary that you'll see kind of be like, oh, okay, who's this guy? So, and also, like a lot of these teams don't really know much about Paxton Bunch, to be honest with you, but I will tell you that the Columbus Aviators did not protect. They did not protect, go after a punter or kicker. So, we love specialists. UFL loves specialists. It's how a lot of these guys get the stick. Peter Bowden, a guy from the Michigan Panthers last year, he's currently on a futures deal with the Chargers. So we'll see what happens. But I mean, that's Columbus Aviators. I think it's all going to come back down to the quarterback. We'll see what happens. I know they picked up Jalen McClendon, Clayton Tune, and Jalen Morton. We'll see what happens with McClendon. See if he becomes the guy. But Columbus doing some good stuff. You can't count out that roster, man. You cannot count out that roster. And we'll see how it rolls from there. So very excited for them. But I mean, I'm a Ted Ginn truther. So I was big on Ted Ginn when I played Madden back in the day. Battlehawks go into the Battlehawks. The Anthony Beck led Orlando Guardians pumping this one out here. Orlando Storm. My apologies. And tongue-tied on this. So much craziness in this league. So I feel like I'm not the only one, but they go with Jared Williams and Teton Saltz. Saltz was Beck's backup. So I was a little bit confused on, why he was the first pick. And then Jared Williams also was a guy who's kind of kicked around a lot, played with the Brahmas at one point, was released, and then DC Defenders had him for a little bit. Not bad. Sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe not. So you're going to notice a trend here. Beck did as good of a job to keep as many Battlehawks guys that he could. He went only 6 protected players for the 2025 or 2026 protection part of this. He had the Brahmas, inherited the Brahmas roster. Demonte Beckett, Isaiah Buggs, 2 dudes, Hajan Corbin, Steve Stylianos, 2 dudes, and then Zuri Henry, and then Jacob Seitz, 2 dudes. 4 out of the 6 of these guys earned NFL contracts at one point. And then, you got a guy like Buggs, who is pretty much an NFL player. Beckett, all XFL guy at one point, led the league in tackles. He's a guy that, pretty dynamic on the football field. And then Jayshon Corbin led the league in rushing. Steve Stylianos. You hope that Beck, who traditionally does not use tight ends, I think Jake Sutherland's biggest year was 15 receptions for 120 yards. You hope that he gets an opportunity to showcase his skill set because that man can play, and he's a pretty darn good football player. I found this pretty awesome. Bringing in Chris Rowland. Rowland's had some pretty great games against the Battlehawks. So the fact that Beck went and got him, I thought was pretty hilarious. Jerome Cap's been a key special teams guy for Beck. Maybe he gets to break into the receiving core. Has been around for two seasons in St. Louis and hasn't had the opportunity. Marquez Stevenson, 6th-round pick, 27 years old, 27, 28. Has had plenty of NFL ties, but has done some pretty good stuff with with San Antonio. And then Sam Wiglos, coming from Ohio, the University of Ohio Bobcats, was with Beck last year after a stint with the Rams, bounced back and forth, played in a couple games. So maybe he gets to be propelled a little bit more in, this second go around in the UFL. Obviously, Nate Meters coming back, Ravis Rivers, arena guy. He's going to be with He's going to be now instead of Memphis, he's going to be with the Orlando Storms. Micah Abraham, obviously Donnie Abraham, be coming back. He'll be the defensive coordinator. You can clip that. So Micah coming back, along with his father, who will be the defensive coordinator. So keep that there, and then going into his second part of this, Joey Fisher, guy who'd been with Pittsburgh. Was actually drafted at one point by USFL teams. Curious, should be a good competition piece. Jason Ivey, 2025 UDFA. Michael Gonzalez, young guy, real young guy. Really excited to see what he's got going on. If he can develop and push the start for that starting guard spot, I think he'll be in a really good position with any of those guys. But they're all youthful and they're all fresh from the cut, for lack of better words. A lot of new faces, except for Fidarius Payne, and a lot of new faces over here. Fidarius Payne is a guy the Battlehawks drafted in 2024 in that rookie college draft. Originally signed to come back with the team, and then did not. I think because he signed with I think the Colts or the Texans or something like that. Really pumped to see him. The team obviously brought back Chris Garrett, Keyshawn Banks, Gabriel Murphy, all guys who have had success at the NFL. Chris Garrett's been back for a long time, played with the Houston Gamblers, won Special Teams Player of the Year. Deshaun White had NFL success a little bit, in addition to having ties with the Michigan Panthers as a draft pick. I believe he was a fifth-round draft pick. And Deion Jennings, New Jersey guy, went to Rutgers, played with the Tampa Bay Bucks, Baltimore Ravens, another guy that could be a high impact player in this league, a quick rental, guy one and done, just youthful roster, good experience, and just guys who the UFL is trying to highlight. A lot more rentals. I know that's a little bit rude, but that's the reality of the situation. Aaron Krusnek blew it up in the ELF. I think he had like over 120 receptions. I know he triple crowned. I think he had 20 touchdowns or something like that. Had a really good season. Beck actually signed him to the Battlehawks roster. He played with former San Antonio Brahmas and Houston Roughnecks quarterback Reed Sinnett, who won the MVP. That's a guy that, I'm going to see if he can make the jump. JJ Galbraith from South Dakota, another guy recently with the Pittsburgh Steelers, another dude you can only keep your eyes on and whatnot. Another guy that I'm pretty excited about is Elijah Badger. He's 2025 UDFA, was with the Chiefs, got to see him. All guys who are competent football players who could really change the dynamic of this league. Big thing's always going to come down to who do they have coming in at quarterback. You have DTR and you have Jack Plummer. Obviously, a third spot's open. We'll see who he decides. As far as with specialists, went with a similar framed guy as Andre Schmitz. Pretty crazy that he wasn't able to get Rodrigo Blankenship, but Michael Lance will be his kicker coming out of, I want to say he went to USC. Then you got Jack Browning, who was a 2024 UDFA. He's been on the NFL workout cycle. I think he's been with 3 teams. And then he was able to retain Alex Matheson, who's been with him since 23, has had a stint with the Rams, a couple NFL workouts, and he was an all USFL long snapper in 23 or 25. So did a pretty, kept some of his guys, didn't keep others. Just kind of nature of the beast, man. I wish I could make it easier, but it is a whole lot of is what it is, as they say. Very curious to see kind of how this dynamic goes with Beck's new regime, um, especially if there's going to be a little bit of a rivalry with this next team, which are Birmingham Stallions. I mean, starting it off strong, right? With you're going to start it off strong with a guy like Steven Gonzalez, all UFL guy. Um, you know, all UFL, all XFL. Noah Johnson has played great football for Michigan Panthers. Noah Henderson has had success in this league. What's cool is because, like, in my opinion, AJ McCarron, he's watched all these guys, he's played against them and whatnot. So he kind of, I'm sure at times is like, man, wouldn't mind him being around. But Noah Henderson's got ties with the Arlington Renegades. He's also played with the Memphis Showboats. The team picked up or protected Armani Taylor Prolu, Mason Brooks, a guy who had some NFL stints this year. So very curious to see, how that works out as well. But yeah, I mean, he gets his boy in Steven Gonzalez. Avery Genesee is there as well. So, Avery Genesee might just very curious on that because he's 32 years old at this point. A lot of miles on the body. So we'll see what happens in that front. Defensive 7, TJ Carter, former Michigan Panthers player, Kavanas Tizino, Olakuni Fatukasi. These are athletic backers who can run around, make plays. And then Amani Bledsoe, guy who I thought should have been an NFL guy. Plenty of talent, plenty of motor. Might be a little bit smaller. Maybe his arm length isn't what guys want, but I mean that was a guy who really tore up the middle and will continue to make plays. And I'm really pumped to see how he is able to evolve in this league. Blessed to see him get at least one more year. That was a guy. And then TJ Carter's a guy who's been around for a couple of years, had some NFL success through the USFL ties, and he comes back. So his skill positions I really like. Despite Anthony McFarland being older, you get David Davis, who elite receiver in 2024, dealt with injuries in 2025. Jaden Mickens, a little bit longer in the tooth, but dynamic returner, did a lot of good stuff. Marcus Sims can stretch the field, make plays. A little curious on this with Samson Nakua, mostly because he got arrested, to be honest with you, and wasn't really sure what he was going to be doing. But I mean, good vibes guy, probably not going to make it out of camp. So we'll see what happens on that front. But the team did keep Marlon Williams. So he'll be going into his fifth year with the team. Defensively, they bring back JoJo Tillery, who's been manning the backfield for them since 2022. Lucas Dennis has had some really high points in this league. 2023 XFL player, transitioned to the NFL, and then back the last year with the Battlehawks, played some really high level football for St. Louis. And Lance Boykin, a guy who's been around with the Showboats. Transitioning into their college draft, Andrew Rame, a guy that, in my opinion, is going to be able to compete probably for the center position. It's going to be him and Noah Johnson, in my opinion. Jackson Carman, 2022 or 2021 second round pick. I know he was with Miami and Cincinnati. He's another guy that can compete. I'm not really that high on Tyrese Robinson. I know he's kind of thrown to the fire a couple times. I think I watched him in preseason. Wasn't too impressed with his kick, but has all the opportunity right here to work on it. Tell you what, their front 7, really like Stone Bladen, really like Amari Thomas, really impressed. But this team also kept Tay Crowder and Ronnie Perkins, and picked up Kobe Jones. I think Deontay Johnson is going to start behind and be like the 3 behind Tizino, but then he'll be a guy who works his way up in the rotation. Cameron Young's another guy to keep high tabs on, 4th round pick out of Mississippi State. See if he's able to push for playing time as well. Liked him coming out. This receiver core that they were able to pick up, man. I mean, Chenault, I know might be long in the tooth, plenty of experience. Justin Ross, another guy that was thrown into the fire, man. But 6'4" frame, Kansas City, 3 years, man, Super Bowl champion. Really impressed by that. I like Nate Noel. EDFA kind of played second fiddle at Missouri to Cody Schrader for a little bit, but I think this is a guy that could really pop and see what's going to happen with him because he's so young, man. And he's just small. Really see if he can evolve his pass catching ability. But I think Tyrion Davis Price is going to be a guy that they really harp on. This team brings back Matt Corral. It's just, you got to be excited about that, especially the fact that he'll have 10 games to actually prove himself. And then pretty cool that Cam Eccles-Looper is going to be coming back as well after a CFL stunt and, see how he rolls and fits in that room. So we'll see. But they also brought back Marlon, not Mario. Mario Williams, not Marlon Williams. So very curious to see how that rolls and how they continue to build from there. So overall, plenty of good stuff that they have going on. Really excited, continuing to try to have that dominant culture there, man. I mean, that's all you can ask for, right? So, also I thought it was kind of neat. There's one more player I was pretty pumped about. Here's some of the defensive backs, but that was pretty neat. That's what it was. It was Colby Wadman coming back. They did pick up 2 kickers, Jonathan Garibay and Rodrigo Blankenship. I don't know why they did that. I guess you gotta have competition, but Colby Wadman was what I thought was pretty neat that they were gonna have him around for the 2026 season. So he's been there, if you don't know, since 2022. But I do think it's a daggone tragedy, in my opinion, that Dallas Bailey saying that the charges were dropped. Well, it's all good on that front. But yeah, I think it's a tragedy that if Kobe Wadman was not on this team. So we're gonna kick over to the Arlington Renegades in the next phase. The Dallas Renegades, keeping it right here. Abdul Beecham, all great picks for their allotment, in my opinion. All these guys can start. Kean Sutherland recently playing with the Lions. Abdul Beecham, solid pro, and then Chim Okafor has had some NFL contracts as well. All really solid pieces and all guys that could possibly start. I know that Dallas claimed him, Sam Tecklenburg as well, so I'm curious to see if he's able to push. But yeah, I mean, they did a good job. You gotta be pumped about what they're doing there. Moving into their their front seven. Antoine Jackson, professional football player. Carson Wells, professional football player. Callahan O'Reilly. Everyone they got in their front seven is capable and able to play football at this level, at a high version of it. Andrew Dow made a lot of tackles. So these are going to be some tough cuts. JT Tyler, I believe he was out of Princeton, another guy who's done a really, really good job. So we'll see. We will see it. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, he was out of Princeton. He's been with the Gamblers and whatnot. So I'm very curious to see where he transitions to into the next phase. He might be a guy that we'll try to figure out where he kind of fits in this new phase of the league. But I actually really like what Arlington has done. Their skill positions, Greg Ward still going. Played with San Antonio last year, San Antonio Commanders of the AAF. Denzel Mims, another guy who kind of didn't really have the best year with the Battlehawks, but was released, but managed to find his way back. And then you have whatchamacallit. Then you got Curtis Hodges, who's a guy who's been around for a little bit as well. Don't really think he, figures to do much, but he is a large target in the red zone. So he's someone to be excited about. So overall, really solid in the front seven. They're offensive skill guys, and then they pick up Quintarian Cole, who's been pretty good for the Battlehawks, Amani Marsh, Chris Steele, Brendan Sebastian, all quality pieces. I think Sebastian might be the odd man out, but I definitely think Cole starts. The team also protected Ajay Harris, who's been around these leagues for God knows years upon years upon years. Chris Steele at one point was with the San Antonio Brahmas. He might be a guy who it could be Sebastian and him competing for the last spot on that roster. Moving into their offensive line, Mike Nowitzki, I'm very curious to see how he competes with Sam Tecklenburg, but I definitely think he's kind of a lock to make this roster. He's been out of the game for a minute. Wasn't really much interest last year. Tremaine Atrim Jr., older guy. Very curious to see they went that direction in the free agent draft. 6-year NFL veteran. Kind of speaking out both sides of the mouth a little bit with that one. But those are really the two guys I think can push. And then you got Josiah Azim, 7th round pick, 2024, 2 seasons with the Saints. He's a guy you expect to compete with Chim Okafor and Alex Akinbulu, who's been there for a while as well. I think one of the more highlighted selections of the UFL draft was their skill positions. And specifically, it's going to be Peyton Hendershot. In my opinion, I want to say he's bounced around, but he's a pretty high prospect, and did a lot of good stuff as a UDFA coming out of Virginia, and he was with Dallas and most recently Kansas City. They made a post for him. Rick Neuheisel talked about him, and I mean he's kind of who you want in this league, and with a 6'4", 6'5" guy, with Sal Cannella not going to be around anymore. I mean, this is a guy to get real excited about. So very excited to see, him still 26 years old, guy that could push around. Isaiah Spiller, 4th round draft pick a couple of years ago. I think him and Day Hunter kind of compete and kind of push and see where they kind of align moving forward. But overall, excited to see where he kind of ends up in this. Going over to the defensive backs, Trey Fluellen, a guy Houston was pretty high up on. He could be a guy that kind of revitalize his standing in the league and push. I know he signed with Houston and then had some stints with the Saints, and then there was like a social media post. So, I mean, if he's able to revitalize it, go from there. DJ James, younger guy. I mean, there's some age in that cornerback room. So if a guy like James is able to come in there and compete, he could do some good stuff and then find his way to an NFL roster pretty soon. Specialists, Antonio Ortiz comes back. They also go 2 kickers, so maybe it's maybe it's not right, but you got Brendan Hall. I don't really know much about him, and then you got Colin Thieker. So we'll see what happens. I know both those guys don't have NFL experience or anything like that. So very very curious to see how it all shakes out. But Antonio Ortiz is a guy who's gotten some experience and whatnot, and he's been able to right the ship when things are coming around. I like what they did here for Houston as we transition to our last team, and I appreciate anyone who's been around and chumming it up with me. Just Friday night, kind of relaxing, not really doing anything, so I might as well have gone over a lot of this. So you're hanging out, appreciate you. It's always fun to talk ball and everything like that. If you're new here, you want to subscribe, do whatever you want. I don't really care. But as Houston goes into their 3rd rebrand, Jared Jones-Smith was selected. He retired. So, you know, I don't know what to say about that. Christian DeLora, older guy, once again, speaking on both sides of the mouth, been with Birmingham for a while, has been phased out of their starting rotation and whatnot. So kind of curious to see where he kind of fits in all this. And then Donovan West, really excited to see him actually play. Did some good stuff in 2023 with the Vegas Vipers, and then he did not. So I mean, just kind of, I don't want to say that. Donovan's just been behind a lot of experienced guys in St. Louis, hasn't really had most opportunities. So we'll see where he lands on this. Jack Kramer's coming back from Bowling Green. They'll kind of be running through him. And then Cam Carter, guy who was the subject of a trade between him and Marcus Sims. Very curious to see where he lands up as well on their depth chart. He'd probably be my odd man out. Really like Keon Bars. Played last year with Arlington. Shaka Tony, guy signed late to the Battlehawks, didn't really get much. Malik Fisher's a guy who, he had some XFL opportunity through the NFL Alumni Academy, was able to transition into a contract with the Houston Texans in 2024. And then Charlie Thomas also got a contract as well. All guys who, I think it's going to run through Malik Fisher personally, and then Shaka Tony is going to be a guy that they can possibly rely on. Also worth noting that on the defensive in the secondary, the Roughneck or Gamblers opted to protect Damon Arnett, Markel Roby, and Keenan Isaac, all guys who have been with the program for a while. Markel Roby, Pittsburgh State guy, Division II. So excited to see him still kicking. Braylon Sanders, really, in my opinion, really fun guy to watch. With DC, any one of those DC defenders are exciting to me. They just turn out NFL talent left and right, so he'll be a guy there. Worth noting that Houston protected Justin Hall and John J. Kirkland was claimed as well. So was Jaquarius Spivey, who signed with the Kansas City Chiefs over the summer. So good core of receivers. You add in Nate McCreary. I personally think Hunter Deckers is going to get the job, especially with him not opting to sign that futures deal with the Saints after they bounced him back and forth so many times. In my opinion, you don't do that for just any guy. You do it for a guy you want an investment in, and I think the Saints are buying in with this. And with Rick Mueller and Randy Mueller obviously being brothers and whatnot, I think that matters in the overall cog of this thing. C. Thomas, yeah, man. Malik Fisher was a huge pick. The thing is about Malik Fisher, Thomas, is, he didn't have the best statistical season, but Andre Mitzi and Derek Robinson, he really opened up things for all those guys. And like Joe Wallace in the middle, like they played such great complementary football so all those guys can eat, that they did a really good job. And yeah, Cam Sutton coming back. CJ was entertaining. I would only lobby that Terrell Buckley could entertain the masses as much as CJ did. But in the end of the day, I don't know if they got much better. Because at the end of the day, like Kevin Sumlin to me doesn't lead men. So I don't know. It is what it is. It's just, I don't know. But you also got guys like Nate McCreary, guys going to compete, dealt with injuries and whatnot, opened the way for Toa. But he was a guy who I thought had a lot of success in 2024 with the Michigan Panthers. Kyle Loxley, versatile dude, was able to do some good things when given the opportunity in Memphis. Very curious to see their two quarterbacks. I'd give Dresser Wynn a call. No. Jim Monos is still there, so I give Dresser Wynn a call. I'm sure he's chilling. Wouldn't mind hanging out for a little bit. Defensive backs never go wrong with Kerry Vincent. My guy Nico Bolden, um, still kicking around in this league. Plenty of good work that he's done as a special teams guy. I think he'll be able to still be there and contribute. Um, Going into their free agent period, Gareth Warren, Lindenwood guy, really funny. Lindenwood sent two guys to the UFL, USFL, and they've both played for the Houston Gamblers. So I think that's pretty cool. Obviously, I don't think that's I don't think that's a 100% planned, but it is what it is. So some to keep tabs on, some to be pumped about and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, anytime a Lindenwood guy gets a shot, you gotta give him a chance. I think he's gonna start. I heard some good things about him in Pittsburgh from a guy I know out there. So you also rally into the back end. I think a lot of these guys are going to be depth players. I mean, you got Anthony Hines and Marvin Moody as your linebackers. You know, Eugene Asante, UDFA out of oh man, help me out of Auburn. Has had some opportunities with Miami, Cleveland, and the Falcons. So he's a guy to be really excited about. So a couple pumped up here, nothing too crazy. I think they're going to rely more on veteran depth than anything else. I mean, you got a West Alabama guy, Caleb Bass at tight end. We'll see what he does. Marcus Major at running back is probably the best pickup. Had an injury with Baltimore, so he's a guy that's really pumped. I'm really pumped to see. And then as far as with their specialists and everything like that, you bring back Mark Ortiz, punter Mike Rivers, and then John Hoyland. So I know it was a lot to go over. Appreciate you guys rapping with me for a little bit. If you guys, new here, want to support, you can leave a comment, you can subscribe, anything you want to do on that. But, I think it was fun. Like I said, it's a lot of players to go over. I don't know, just cool to talk ball on a Friday night. Do me a favor, though, if you are new here, if you want to rank the teams who had the best draft, be curious to see people's opinions. If not, so be it. But thank you guys for hanging out for a little bit, and enjoy your Friday nights. Bye.